In a move shaking the American economy, Ford Motor Company has halted all domestic production lines. For over a century, Ford has been a symbol of U.S. manufacturing. This sudden stop is a seismic event. The silence in Dearborn and across the country signals the immense pressures facing even the most iconic American brands. The decision has triggered immediate political reaction, most notably from former President Donald J. Trump, who quickly reframed the story as a political battleground. This is more than a business headline. It's a test of economic policy and national identity. We'll break down the factors behind Ford's drastic move, the immediate impact on workers and communities, and Trump's response in the context of his America First policies. The implications are profound, forcing a national conversation about the future of U.S. manufacturing. As we examine this crisis, we must ask, is this a temporary downturn or a permanent shift in American industrial power? The stakes are high for jobs, economic stability, and the nation's manufacturing future. Let's dive into the details of this unprecedented moment. Ford's pre-market press release was blunt. All U.S. assembly and manufacturing plants are halted, effective immediately. CEO Jim Farley called it a painful but necessary step to protect Ford's North American future. The shutdown affects every major Ford facility, from the Michigan assembly plant to the Kentucky truck plant, and halts both vehicle and component manufacturing. While design and R&D centers remain open, the heart of Ford's American manufacturing is paused. Ford promises temporary support for affected employees, but the word indefinite has sparked deep anxiety. The United Auto Workers Union responded with anger, demanding clarity and accountability. The uncertainty is devastating for thousands of families and suppliers who depend on Ford. Analysts are alarmed by the lack of a restart date. This isn't a routine pause, but a full stop. The financial equation for building cars in America, according to Ford, is broken. The nation now waits to see if this is a short-term measure or the start of a painful new era. Ford's decision is the result of relentless economic headwinds battering the auto sector. Consumer demand for new vehicles, especially high-margin trucks and SUVs, has plummeted due to high interest rates and inflation. Borrowing costs are at a two-decade high, pushing buyers to delay purchases or opt for used cars. Production costs have soared. Raw materials, energy, and logistics are all more expensive, driven by global tensions and trade shifts. The new UAW labor agreement, while a win for workers, has added significant fixed costs. Ford's massive investment in electric vehicles hasn't paid off as quickly as hoped, with EV adoption lagging. Traditional vehicle sales are down, and EV investments aren't yet profitable, leaving Ford squeezed from both sides. International competition, especially from South Korea and China, is eroding Ford's market share. This perfect storm, falling demand, rising costs, a tough EV transition, and fierce competition forced Ford to hit the brakes and rethink its U.S. strategy. The company is now at a financial crisis point, reassessing its entire manufacturing approach. Ford's shutdown sends shockwaves far beyond its own factories. Tens of thousands of Ford employees face layoffs, and entire communities in Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky are bracing for economic pain. The impact ripples through the supply chain. Suppliers, logistics firms, and small businesses all stand to lose. For every Ford job, several more exist at dependent suppliers, many of whom now face layoffs or bankruptcy. The disruption affects trucking, rail, and ports, paralyzing a vast logistical network. The U.S. economy will feel the hit. Auto manufacturing is a major contributor to GDP, and a prolonged shutdown could tip regions into recession. The stock market has already reacted, with auto sector shares tumbling. Ford dealerships will soon run out of new vehicles, driving up prices and pushing loyal customers to competitors. The longer the halt lasts, the harder it will be for Ford to recover lost market share. This is a national economic crisis, not just a corporate one. Within an hour, former President Trump blasted Ford's decision as a betrayal of the American worker. He declared, "This would have never happened under my watch," blaming weak leadership and bad deals. Trump directly targeted the current administration's economic and environmental policies, especially the push for electric vehicles. "They're forcing companies to make electric cars nobody wants, and it's bankrupting them," he said. He called for a return to gasoline-powered vehicles and an America First approach. Trump contrasted the current crisis with his own record, touting trade deals like USMCA and tariffs on China as protections for U.S. jobs. He argued, "If you want to sell cars in America, you have to build them in America." Trump's rapid, forceful response turned Ford's shutdown into a political flashpoint. He demanded an end to EV mandates and renewed focus on domestic manufacturing. His statements have energized his base and put pressure on Ford and the administration to act. The debate over Ford's future is now a debate over America's economic direction. Trump's intervention ensures this story will dominate the national conversation. Ford's production halt recalls past auto industry crises, like the 2008-09 meltdown and the oil shocks of the 1970s. In 2008, GM and Chrysler needed bailouts to survive. Ford barely avoided bankruptcy. The 1970s oil crises forced a shift from big cars to smaller, fuel-efficient imports, catching U.S. automakers off guard. Today, Ford faces a mix of economic, technological, and political pressures. High interest rates, a tough EV transition, and fierce global competition. Unlike past crises, this is not just financial or energy-related, but a complex convergence of challenges. Ford's preemptive halt is a new strategy, stopping losses and forcing a national conversation rather than waiting for collapse. The company hopes to avoid the fate of those who failed to adapt in the past. The stakes are higher than ever for Ford and the entire industry. Is Ford's drastic move an isolated event or a warning for the entire industry? General Motors and Stellantis face similar pressures: high costs, weak demand, and a slow EV transition. Their stock prices fell sharply after Ford's announcement, signaling sector-wide anxiety. GM's heavy EV investments and Stellantis's cautious approach both carry risks in this volatile market. All three automakers rely on high-margin trucks and SUVs, making them vulnerable to a sustained downturn. Ford may simply be the first to act, but analysts are watching for signs of stress at its rivals. The entire domestic auto industry is now on notice. Ford's halt could be the canary in the coal mine. A deeper, systemic problem may be unfolding. As the shock fades, the focus shifts to what comes next for Ford and the U.S. auto industry. The duration of the shutdown is critical. A brief pause is survivable, but months of inactivity could be devastating. Ford's leadership faces pressure to provide a clear plan for restarting production. The federal government must balance immediate economic relief with long-term EV policy goals. Potential actions include financial aid for workers, emergency talks with the UAW, and re-evaluating EV targets. The UAW is now fighting to protect its members' pay, benefits, and job security during the shutdown. Ford may need to pivot, perhaps emphasizing hybrids or restructuring to cut costs. The company's next moves will shape not just its own future, but the future of American manufacturing. The decisions made now will have lasting consequences for workers, communities, and the industry. The road ahead is uncertain, but the stakes could not be higher. Ford's sudden halt is more than a corporate crisis. It's a national reckoning. The convergence of weak demand, high costs, and a costly EV transition has overwhelmed even this industrial giant. Tens of thousands of jobs and entire communities are at risk, and the political debate is fierce. The shutdown is now a symbol in the battle over America's economic identity. Green transition versus traditional manufacturing. Ford's rivals face similar scrutiny, and the industry's resilience is being tested as never before. The choices made in the coming weeks by Ford, government, and unions will shape U.S. manufacturing for a generation. The immediate priority is supporting workers and communities, but the long-term challenge is forging a sustainable future. As the nation processes this news, one question remains. Is this the painful rebirth of American industry or a sign of irreversible decline? The answer will define the next chapter of American manufacturing. The world is watching.